My name is Daniel. I'm 41, married, 2 kids, live in Oregon. On the surface I have a good life, and I do. But there's always been a hole in it. When I was 10 years old, my father left and never came back. One morning he kissed my mom, patted my head, grabbed his briefcase, and vanished. No note. No explanation. Police said he likely skipped town. My mom always said the same thing. He ran away from us. I believed her. Until last month. My mom passed away in November. I was cleaning out her attic when I found a locked metal box. It had no key, but my toolbox made quick work of that. Inside were documents I'd never seen before. A passport in a different name. A faded photo of my dad with people I didn't recognize. A map with coordinates marked in red ink. And a letter addressed to me. It began, "Daniel, if you found this, then the truth can no longer hurt you. But it may still hurt others." That was when I realized. My father didn't run. He was taken. I stared at the red circle on the map. The coordinates led to a stretch of forest in Northern California, just outside a town called Ukiah. I'd never heard of it. The letter was short, handwritten in neat, shaky cursive. "Daniel, if you found this, then you deserve answers. But be careful. What I left behind was never meant to be found. Go to the place on the map. Look under the stone." That was it. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I told my wife I needed to take a quick trip for work. Kiss my kids goodbye. And I drove 6 hours south. Ukiah was quiet. Old, rural, surrounded by hills and trees that seemed to whisper secrets. I followed the map to a trailhead off a dirt road. No signs. No tourists. Just woods. After a 20-minute hike I found it. A flat stone near a dry creek, exactly where the red dot was drawn. I dug beneath it. And found a waterproof tin container. Inside, a cassette tape labeled only with the date. August 3, 1993. A folded document titled, "Intake Procedure." Facility 12B. A photo of my father, handcuffed, in a white jumpsuit. My hands shook. My father wasn't missing. He'd been taken by someone with rules. And a facility. I didn't even own a cassette player. Who does anymore? I stopped at a pawn shop in town and bought a dusty stereo with a tape deck. The guy behind the counter gave me a weird look when I asked if it worked. "Only one way to find out," he said. Back at the motel, I sat on the edge of the bed and popped in the tape. Click. Word. Then a voice. My father's voice. "Daniel. If you're hearing this, then I'm probably gone. I don't know how long they'll keep me. Or if they'll let me out at all." He sounded older. Tired. Nervous. "What you need to understand is, this wasn't a normal job. I worked for the government. Contractor. Think intelligence adjacent. Facility 12B isn't on any map because it's not supposed to exist." The tape hissed for a second. "They took me in for exposure. Not to protect me. To shut me up. What I saw. I wrote it down. Hid the rest. If you found this tape, then maybe you can find the rest too." Then static. Click. Silence. My heart was pounding. I rewound and played it 3 times. He mentioned notes. Hidden somewhere. I looked back at the map. There was a second mark. Muller. Winter. Barely visible. And that's when I knew. There was more buried. I traced the faint red dot to an abandoned ranger station 20 minutes deeper into the woods. It wasn't on any official map, but when I zoomed in on satellite view, I saw the roof, moss-covered and nearly hidden by trees. I drove as far as I could, then hiked the rest. The station was rotting. Vines through windows, shingles curled like old paper. But the lock on the front door. Someone had been here. I pried the door open and stepped inside. Dust, dead leaves, and on the far wall, a cabinet with a rusted lock. I broke it with a rock. Inside was a box, smaller than the one at home, lined with foil, radiation shielding. Inside, a stack of handwritten pages. A film canister labeled 12B. Test footage. A Polaroid photo of something. Not human. I dropped the picture. Looked like a man. but not. Elongated eyes. No hair. Wearing what looked like a hospital gown. My father stood beside it. He was smiling. The pages were written in my dad's hand. Diagrams. Symbols. A report titled Unscheduled Encounter. March 5, 1993. This wasn't about espionage. It was about contact. I didn't want to believe it. But I couldn't deny what I saw in that Polaroid. Back at the motel, I stared at the film canister. Who even develops film like this anymore? I drove to the nearest city, Eureka, and found an independent photo lab that specialized in archival work. I gave them the canister. The technician raised an eyebrow. "Where'd you find this?" "Family archive," I lied. "Took 4 hours." When I returned, the tech had printed stills and digitized the footage. He handed me a flash drive. "This is wild," he said. I thanked him and left. I didn't watch it there. Back in my car, I opened my laptop. The footage was grainy. No sound. But clear enough to see. A white-walled room. Medical equipment. Bed. And in it, the same humanoid figure from the photo. Hairless. Gray skin. Wired to machines. A man entered the frame. My father. He approached the being. They looked at each other. The creature blinked, slowly, and then lifted its hand. My father reached back. Then the screen cut to black. No timestamp. No context. Just one final frame. Property of Facility 12B. Classified Level 5. Closed the laptop. My hands were shaking. And then my motel phone rang. No one had the number. Picked up. A woman's voice. Clip. "Mr. Green. Stop looking." Blick. I didn't sleep that night. Every noise outside made me jump. I kept replaying the call in my head. That voice, calm, direct, threatening. The next morning I checked out early. Took side roads out of town. Paranoia. Maybe. But when I stopped at a gas station 2 hours later, I saw it. Black SUV. No plates. Parked across the lot. Tinted windows. Pulled out when I did. I changed routes 3 times. Pulled into a random diner and waited an hour. The SUV was gone. When I got home, I told my wife part of the truth. That I was digging into old family history and someone didn't like it. She thought I was spiraling. Maybe I was. But that night someone knocked on our door. Opened it. No one there. Just a small envelope on the doormat. Inside. A photo of me at the ranger station. A copy of my dad's film still. A single line. "You're not ready for the truth." That was it. No signature. No return address. I showed it to my wife. Her face went pale. She didn't argue anymore. I called Kay, my childhood friend, now a tech security analyst. I asked if she could help. She said, "Pack a bag. Come to Seattle. I'll keep you off-grid." I didn't hesitate. Kay lived in a warehouse loft in downtown Seattle. Sparse furniture, racks of equipment, wires running along every wall. The kind of place that looked like it belonged to someone preparing for the end of the world, or trying to expose it. She gave me a hug, then sat me down. "Okay. Show me everything." I gave her the tape. Photo. Flash drive. The notes. Her eyes narrowed at the Facility 12B footage. "Jesus," she muttered. Then she opened one of the handwritten pages. There was a string of numbers and letters I hadn't noticed before. Hex code. "I think this is a key," she said. She cross-referenced it with her own files. After 3 hours of digging, decrypting, and comparing metadata, we cracked it. The key unlocked a remote server. Buried beneath layers of security was a folder titled M. Green Archive. Inside were hundreds of files. Audio recordings, diagrams, logs, and something marked Project Homeward. We opened the first one. It was a blueprint. Not for a building. For a vessel. Kay and I stayed up all night going through the files. Project Homeward was massive. Dozens of memos, schematics, timelines. Some stamped deep black or no forn. One was labeled simply, "Return Protocol." The documents painted a chilling picture. In the early 90s, The US government made contact with a non-terrestrial biological entity, NTBE for short. The being in the photo. It wasn't a crash. It was a handover. The being was delivered. And my father. He was part of the research team assigned to it. But something changed. A journal entry stood out. Subject exhibits recognition. Communicates using resonance patterns. Not random. Not instinctive. Purposeful. Another memo. M. Green requesting reassignment. Claims, prolonged exposure to subject induces vivid hallucinations. Request denied. Then the big one. A transcript labeled Exit Briefing Green M. This is not what we signed up for. You're not studying it. You're hiding it. And it knows. Mr. Green, you're to remain on site until further notice. That's not a request. Felt sick. They locked him in. And then they erased him. There was one last file in the archive. Encrypted. Marked, legacy/eyes only. It required a second key, one my father mentioned briefly in a note. Key fragment stored off-site. Coordinates embedded in field log 27. We pulled up log 27. The coordinates pointed to Nevada. To a ghost town. In Hollow. Kay looked at me. We're really doing this. He nodded. The next day we were on the road. Pine Hollow was a shell. Empty buildings. Wind. The local sheriff hadn't seen visitors in weeks. We told him we were historical researchers. He didn't ask questions. We searched the crumbling town hall, the church, the abandoned gas station. Nothing. Then we found the mine. At the back of the shaft, buried beneath a collapsed timber wall, was a metal container. Inside, a biometric drive and a pair of dog tags. A gasp. This isn't just data storage. The drive required a match. Blood match. Pricked my thumb. Touched the sensor. Click. The files opened. And there it was. Video logs from the last 12 days of Facility 12B. Audio of a final agreement. And a single-line message from my father. If you're reading this, then you may be the only one left who can finish it. Back in Seattle, Kay and I decrypted the drive. There were 12 video files. Each dated and time-stamped from the final 2 weeks of my father's life at Facility 12B. The first few showed surveillance. Corridors, labs, personnel movement. But by file 5 everything changed. The being, the one in the Polaroid, was no longer passive. It was moving, speaking. To my father. Not in words. Tones. Rhythms. Light pulses. And my father was responding. Log 9 showed my father alone, whispering into a recorder. I don't think they want to leave. I think they're waiting for us to be ready. Or afraid we won't be. They're not hostile. Not stupid. Just patient. In log 11 the camera shook violently. Alarms blared. Something breached containment. In log 12, there was only one voice. My father's. If you find this, understand they gave me a choice. Took it. I'm not dead. Not exactly. But I'm not on Earth anymore either. Tell Daniel I love him. And I'm not alone. Then static. Then nothing. Kay stared at me. I whispered. He left with them. We sat in silence for a long time. Kay finally broke it. If this goes public, Daniel, you won't get your life back. Not ever. She was right. The data we had, the film, the logs, the testimony, it was explosive. But not just for the government. For science. For faith. For everything. I opened my father's final message again. They gave me a choice. He didn't just disappear. He chose something them. Was it escape? Salvation? Or something else entirely? I remembered the letter I found in the attic. The truth may still hurt others. I looked at Kay. What if I don't publish? A shrug. Then you carry it. Quietly. But not alone. I made 2 copies of the archive. One in a safe. One with Kay. The rest I buried. Then I wrote my own letter. To my children. If you're reading this someday, I hope the world is ready. Hope you are. Because your grandfather wasn't lost. He was chosen. And maybe one day, you'll hear from him again. 3 months later, life settled. Or pretended to. I was back at work. Kay moved out of the city. The black SUV hadn't returned. The world was quiet again. But I wasn't. Not really. Then one evening I got a call from Kay. Check your email. Now. Opened it. One message. No subject. No sender. Attached was an audio file. It was 7 seconds long. Low hum. Series of tones. Then silence. Then my father's voice. Daniel. I told you I wasn't dead. I dropped my phone. Kay called again. I ran it through filters. It's genuine. The signal bounced from 3 satellites. Origin unknown. It's not from Earth. I sat down. My heart wouldn't slow. I looked up at the sky. And whispered, I hear you, Dad. Kay and I knew what we had to do. We dug out the satellite transmitter from her garage, leftover from a research project years ago. She reconfigured the uplink. I wrote the message. This is Daniel Green. Message received. If you can hear me, I'm listening. Believe you. I'm ready. We encoded it in the same frequency band as the signal that came in, layered with the same tonal pulses, the same resonance. We sent it. 3 times. 12-hour intervals. Then we waited. A week passed. Then another. I started to wonder if I'd imagined it all. Until the light bulb in my garage blinked. Once. Then twice. Then held. My computer powered on. No internet. No power surge. Just a window opened. Black screen. Green text. Message received. Window closing. Homeward proceeding. Then it vanished. No trace. Kay came running. You saw that too. He nodded. What now? She asked. I looked at the sky again. We wait. And we hope he wasn't the only one who made it. Started with the stars. One night while sitting on my back porch, I noticed them shifting. Not blinking. Not twinkling. Shifting. In a slow, deliberate arc. Kay called minutes later. There's a report from Maui. Amateur astronomers caught a formation. Artificial. Controlled. The news never picked it up. But others did. People who'd seen things. Heard things. Then one morning the same green text interface appeared on my laptop again. Arrival phase initiated. Stand by. Maintain location. Phase window. 72 hours. Kay drove down that night. We cleared the garage. Set up every receiver we had. For 2 days, nothing. Then, just past midnight on the 3rd day, everything lit up. Screens, radios, GPS static turned to structure. And in the middle of it, voice. Daniel. I'm close. My chest tightened. Outside the wind died. The stars above my house blinked once. And held. The sky over our house didn't flash. It didn't roar. Just bent. A ripple like heat off pavement. Silent. Real. Then a figure stepped out of the dark. Older. Thinner. But familiar. My father. He didn't speak at first. Neither did I. He looked at me with eyes that had seen stars I couldn't name. And smiled. Then, you found me. I choked out. I never stopped looking. We sat for hours. Talking. Laughing. Crying. He told me stories no one would ever believe. About worlds without war. Civilizations older than bones. Sky that sings. I couldn't come back before, he said. But I asked for this. Just once. To return. To see you. Kay kept her distance. She understood. As dawn broke, he stood. I can't stay. But now you know. He handed me a thin silver disc. Everything we saw. Everything we learned. You'll know what to do when the time comes. Then he stepped back into the shimmer. And was gone. I don't know when or if I'll hear from him again. But now when I look up, listen. And I wait.